Part 3 by Nutnfancy, reviewing this FN57 pistol. Very interesting pistol. In part 2 I left off talking about that safety, how you have to actuate it with your index finger. And it is a training issue. It's not actuated by rotating your grip, bringing your thumb over. You could do that, but that's totally ill-advised. You would do it with your trigger finger. Now that being said, again, I think it has enough passive safety systems in it that you can safely carry this gun without the safety engaged. And if you notice, Glock does not have a safety. It's the same type of system where you have that redundant safety passive firing pin blocks it. It just cannot go off unless the trigger is deliberately pulled. Now, speaking of the trigger, and I mentioned this in part 2, it is a striker fired gun, meaning it does not have a restrike capability. I will demonstrate what I'm talking about here. By the way, the slide release is very hard to actuate, at least when it's empty. When it's loaded up, it might be a little bit easier, just a heads up. But striker fired, so we pull it and it can't fire again until we recycle the slide and cock it in. That's just like a Glock. And guess what? I have no problems with that at all. There's a lot of people out there that just will swear up and down that they'll never carry a gun unless it has a second strike capability in case they have a bad round. In other words, let's say you're in a defensive encounter, you pull the trigger, nothing happens, and you want to fire on that primer once more. Maybe it's a bad primer. Well, I don't do that, and I don't think most law enforcement officials, military types, are taught if you have a failure to fire in a semi-automatic pistol, what you're going to do is a tap, rack, and I call it a ready drill. Some people call it tap, rack, bang. So you're going to tap your magazine to make sure it is indeed seated, because oftentimes that's the problem. That's why, because there's no round in the chamber, and that's why it's not going off. So the first thing we do is tap, rack, jack the slide back, another round goes in chamber, then we're ready to fire and engage the threat, or bang if you will. So I'm not going to waste time in that situation of trying to double click. Maybe under stress that's just what you would do, but hopefully we're products of our good training and we do a tap, rack, ready drill. So no hits against the trigger whatsoever. And speaking of the trigger, it's very, very nice. It's very single action like, truth be told. Man, that's a hard mofo to release. That magazine release is tough. But the trigger is very nice. Now again, I'm tabletop with this thing. I admit it. You don't really know how good a trigger is until you go out and fire it yourself. So I admit that. And so just take it for what it's worth. My preliminary exposure to the trigger and the time I've had it, it seems nice. In fact, it seems maybe a little bit better than the Glock trigger, a standard Glock trigger. But I like the 3.5 pound connectors in Glocks to lighten the trigger pull up. And I think once that's there, these two triggers seem very similar. So lightweight, nice trigger. And we were talking about the simplicity. It just is very simple. It's a very simple gun. It has your slide release here. Here's your magazine release. Nice thing they did with that magazine release is they raised it. And you'll see me make some videos on common sense Glock modifications, and one of them is an extended magazine release that I definitely think the Glock needs, the Glock 34 or 35 type magazine release, which is extended on their tactical practical models. That makes it so it's easier to find under stress. And guess what? FN Herstal has done that on the 5.7. Great job on that. No sharp edges on the pistol. And I'm kind of going on to the next category, and that's ergonomics. So I'm going to talk about simplicity and ergonomics as well. Now, if I were to carry this gun for a long period of time, I would learn things that I just can't learn in a tabletop review. So just keep that in mind. But my overall impression of this gun is it's very ergonomic. I like it a lot. I really like the stippling on the polymer frame, and I wish Glock did theirs this way. It's not, it's sharpened checkering, and it's granted it's molded into the grip, but it's just outstanding. It really gives the hand a nice grip on the pistol, and it's very ergonomic. Now, there's something that you guys or gals with smaller hands might not like about the FN57, and that is, since the 5.7 by 28 cartridge is a longer cartridge. It has a longer pistol grip, like we can tell by looking at the magazine. This is not a short pistol or magazine. It's longer than a 40, 45, or 9mm mag. That means its circumference is going to be larger. And if you have small hands, that could be an issue if you shoot the 5.7. With my hand size, again, they're kind of on the large size. It's very comfortable. I don't mind it. In fact, I love it. But you may be different. And if you have small hands, you really need to take that in consideration, because there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot shorten it. It does not have swappable back straps on it like some of the other FM models and other pistol designs have. But I don't think that's necessary. Glock doesn't have it, and I never felt Glock was a non-ergonomic design. Nor did I ever feel that because I didn't have a swappable back strap that I'm getting gypped with a Glock design. Never felt that. And I think this is about the same. You have some thumb ramps here, very mild thumb ramps on the left and right hand side. The trigger guard, unlike the HK, is nicely executed in that my finger does not seem to rub inside the trigger guard, and I mentioned that on my HK compact review, how I do not like that. Now, a lot of you guys do not like the flattened trigger guard. I love it, and I'm going to go totally in contrary to every gun rider out there who will just lambast it. I think that's groupthink, and for those of us who do have larger hands, I like the option of resting my offhand on that trigger guard, and I shoot very well that way. Now, you know, I know a lot of law enforcement agencies and whatnot teach, you know, the thumbs to the side, and I've just always shot that way, and I shoot really good and really fast that way. So that's me, and that's the way I've trained, and it just works. So I like the flattened and even hooked trigger guard. I have no issues with it. I much prefer it rather than a rounded one. Ergonomics are excellent. It's interesting, by the way, to note that the slide is actually, this portion here is polymer, and this portion here is steel. Interesting design. And FN, of course, is not afraid to work with synthetics, and they do it quite well, judging from all the guns that I've ever examined. And their SCAR battle rifle coming out this year, both in 223 and 308, makes extensive use of synthetics. Expertly, I might add. And so does the Masada by Magpul. So I'm a big fan of synthetics, and they make the gun light, and I forgot to mention that's another reason why this gun is so light, that it's shielded, the slide is shielded in polymer, and they've kept the mass, the inertial mass, to a minimum to be reliable. And I think, again, that's a function of the caliber, since the caliber is a very lightweight recoiling caliber. It's very high velocity, but we're only sending out 40 grains or so from the barrel, and therefore the rotational mass, or the mass of the slide, can be much less than if we were shooting a 45 or a 40 caliber, and that speaks again to the lightweight of the FN57. So I love the slide design, very nicely done. So ergonomics, simplicity, at least my limited exposure to this seem outstanding and on par with Glock, I will have to say. And then we get to accessories. How's the accessories for this FN57? Well, it's a newer design. It's not super readily available. In fact, you may have a hard time securing this gun in your town, and that's if you live in the United States. So, and with the fact that it is new, the accessories are very limited, and Glock will blow it away in that category. What am I talking about for accessories? Well, I'm talking about a different magazine release, a different slide release, maybe an extended slide release, different options for the trigger, maybe a different trigger pull connector, much like Glock has, night sights, threaded barrels, lights that are specific made and matched to the frame. All those are accessory options for the Glock that you will not have with this FN57, at least as of mid-2008. Again, if this gun does take off, if it does become popular, and mostly the caliber becomes more popular, then that may change. But right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Rail is a standard rail. Thank you very much. They didn't go with any proprietary system, so that means any standard tactical light / laser combination you have will fit on this rail, and that was really excellently done. That was part 3 of the FN57. Here comes part 4.